All right, good morning.
Morning.
It's always great to be back with you guys. We're going to go heavy today. So get those thinking caps on and awake. Bring it. Go get it. Let's. We're going to go a little bit deeper today, and you're going to leave thinking some stuff, and maybe I'll shift a little belief in you about some things. Anyway, but it'll be good. It'll be good. It has to do with your performance. It has to do with your results in life, and it's real and raw. So let's jump right into it. To start, we're just going to go quick. I got so much to cover. To start, I'm going to hand out these. If you'll just take one and pass it back, please. Before I get into the meat of the subject that we're going to talk about today as it relates to performance, I'm going to have you do a quick activity, and I'm going to give you plenty of time to do it, and I want you to be thoughtful about it. So once those get all the way back, and before you start, I'm going to ask you some questions. All right. Everyone, I want you to close your eyes. Just sit back, relax. It's a safe environment. Just close your eyes for a second. With your eyes closed, answer these questions to yourself. What would the ideal life look like? What would the ideal dinner look like? The ideal life after dinner? What would your mornings look like? What would your days be like? How would they be more fulfilled? What type of vacations would you take? What would your life look like on your days off? What would you be doing?
Steelhead fishing.
What would my ideal home look like? Imagine that home. What does that look like? What would the status of my family be, maybe, depending on where you're at in life? How about this one? What would my sales be that would create the lifestyle I ultimately want or like? Now here's what I want you to do. Take those images that you just imagined, and I want you, in your own words, with your own meaning, on the first page, so turn past the cover page, I want you to describe your own ideal life. I'll give you plenty of time to do that. Go ahead and start writing down from where you're at today, whatever season you're at in life right now, what does your ideal life look like right now? Be specific. The more specific you can be, all the way down to the meals you would eat, the better off it'll be for you. So go ahead. It is an individual thing. Just when you're vague, you get vague results. So keep writing. Think. Dwell. Okay, let's just go about one more minute. One more minute. Okay, nice job. Wow. Woo, way to start the morning. Now, why do you think I had you do that? When's the last time you actually wrote down in description your ideal life? I bet it's been a while. So I thought I would take just a few minutes and have you do that because it relates to the subject we're going to talk about today, and that is beliefs. And like I said, we're going to go a little bit deeper today, and then we'll refer back to this toward the end, because it's all beliefs that is limiting you or preventing you from living that life that you just described. And so I want you to think about that as it relates to sales, your income, what you want to achieve, where you want to go, what you want to experience in life. Here's a couple thoughts on it. Our subconscious mind seeks to create the conditions according to what you expect right now. I remember when I worked with Tony Robbins, he would always say, you get what you must have. Not what you want, what you must. And I would take it one step further and say, you get who you are. You attract, you achieve based on the person you've become up to this point, whatever that point is. Everybody's different. Not the income you can have in the future, not the lifestyle you can have in the future, but now. Your subconscious mind works on the expectation of now. It has no judgment of time or space. It just takes the data and it runs with it. And its job, the subconscious mind's job, as we've talked about before, so some of you may not have been in class where we've talked about it, but one of the number one purposes of the subconscious mind is to make you act like you. The other job of the subconscious mind is to resolve conflict. We'll talk about that in a second as it relates to belief in your goals and so forth. Your creative subconscious thinks in terms of necessary. In fact, you can think of it this way. Your subconscious mind is a lot like children. Think about your kids for a second. You tell them to clean the kitchen. My boy goes in to clean the kitchen. He puts the dishes in the dishwasher. But that's it. Right? He doesn't wipe down the table or the counter. He doesn't clean out the sink. He doesn't straighten things up, cleaning it up. I go, Connor, when we say clean the kitchen, we mean clean the whole kitchen, not just put the dishes from the sink into the dishwasher. Well, Dad, you never told me that before. So they do the bare minimum. Our subconscious mind does the same thing. It only gives based on the command that you give it. It'll only attract based on the command that you give it. It'll correct for the mistake. You say, all of a sudden, you have this ideal lifestyle that you just wrote down, and it's way up here, and you lock onto it, and you get excited about it. But your reality is down here. Do you see the space? Your reality is here, wherever that is, but your ideal life is way up here. What does that do? It creates a gap. It creates a space, and in that space is a lot of energy. Conflict creates energy. And it's the purpose of the subconscious mind to resolve conflict, to bring harmony. We call that cognitive dissonance. You've heard that before. To bring that together. And you'll either move toward that ideal life and start taking action accordingly and believing and thinking accordingly, or you'll remain the same and you'll engage in what we call avoidant behavior. You know you should be doing some things, and I'm sure that some of you fall in this category. You know you should be making a certain amount of calls. You know you should be contacting X amount of people every week. You should be doing all these different things to increase sales, give you a higher leg up on the opportunities that are out there. But sometimes we creatively engage in avoidant behaviors, right? And so it's all stored in the mind. The challenge to motivation. This is a good one. The challenge to motivation is that when you arrive at your goal, you lose the drive. You noticed that before? I mean, I remember Bob Mowat, a good friend of mine who I wrote The Secret of the Slight Edge with years ago. He would always say, the worst thing that can happen to a hunter is he takes the time off to go up into the mountains, to go hunting, to spend a week with his best friends. And you have one tag for one deer or elk or whatever you're going to get. And you go out on that Monday, that first day, boom, you get your animal. Why?
Because it's over.
It's over. You got to go home. You got to pack that meat and go. You can't hang out with the friends. You can't chill with the friends. It's over. The week is done, right? But the reality is, the joy is in the chase. It's in the journey. And here's what happens when it comes to motivation. When you have hit your expectation, energy goes away. So the idea that I had this week, I started this week putting together a whole curriculum, kind of a workshop on, which we'll probably maybe do next month, on resolving concerns and handling objections and so forth. And I got to Wednesday, and I just had this thought come to me, no, TJ, that's not what you need to teach this week. you need to teach on beliefs. And not just generally, you need to go a little bit deeper on beliefs. So I'm going to give you a little bit of nuggets and you'll be able to write it down. But there's a power in the chase. There's power. And when you're reaching towards something meaningful, you get that burning desire. It's natural for you to want to close the gap. Okay, go ahead and turn to the next page. Let's go through some stuff here. The embryo of all achievement, or I like to say the embryo of possibility, is belief. I love this subject. One of my first trainings I ever did that went out into the world, my series called The Power to Shape Your Life. In fact, I brought something here just out of be fun. 18 years ago, here was my first workbook, The Power to Shape Your Life. Unbelievable. I found that and I thought, and this whole book is centered around changing beliefs. The subtitle is The Breakthrough Experience That Will Change Your Life Forever. It's all about changing your beliefs. Henry Ford said, if you look down, Henry Ford said, whether you believe you can or believe you can't, you're right. You've heard that before. My favorite quote of all time is by George Lucas. We are all living in cages with the doors wide open. What does that mean? We're not really living in physical cages. What we are living in are constructs. We are living in belief systems that limit us. So, write this down. Everything I have right now, is governed by my beliefs of what is possible and my willingness to take action to manifest it in my life. Everything I have right now is governed by my beliefs of what is possible and my willingness to take action to manifest it in my life. Is there anyone here that does not believe that statement? I think across the board, most people will agree that that's a true statement. So if that's true, and you're not living the lifestyle that you ultimately want, probably means you're not getting the results that you ultimately want. It's your beliefs that's holding you back, because that's what's governing your results in life. It's governing your performance. So let's define belief. Beliefs are a person's set of filters through which a person makes sense of their world. They are ideas that we accept as truth or ideas that we feel strong about. Once you believe something is true, your brain works overtime to find the reasons or, here we go, big one, evidences to support the belief and repels anything that conflicts with the belief. So, beliefs are a set of filters through which a person makes sense of their world. They are ideas that we accept as truth or ideas that we feel strong about. Once you believe something to be true, your brain works overtime to find the reasons and the evidences to support the belief and repel anything that conflicts with the belief. All right, I got some cool things I want to share with you real quick. Roger Bannister did what?
4-minute mile.
Broke the 4-minute mile. Is it interesting that he broke the 4-minute mile in 1954? 6 months later, Landon broke his record. And ever since then, up to date, I did some research on that. As of today, roughly a couple months ago, 505 males have broke the 4-minute barrier. A breakthrough. But there was a 30-year span where nobody broke it. And then all of a sudden, in the last 20 years, more people started breaking it. Has a woman broken the 4-minute mile?
Sure, yes.
No.
No.
I had to do some, I thought so too. I thought so possibly. The number one run of a female.
Gotta be close.
Yeah, it's close. It's,
What about a male that
No woman, here's what it says on Wikipedia. No woman has yet run the 4-minute mile. As of 2015, the woman's record is held by retired Russian, I can't even say her name, with a time of 4.12 seconds.
I find that really surprising because
Okay, now, okay, but check this out. So I was reading this and I'm going, okay, really? This is powerful stuff. Check this out. This is what, when they did a couple years ago with Bolt out of Jamaica, the top human speed, well, I can't say the top human speed, but the general top human speed is 23 miles per hour. And research shows that one day speeds could reach up to 40 miles an hour for human beings. You imagine that? Wow. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. This is what they're saying. If the muscle fibers that can get feet off the ground are maximized, top speeds of 40 miles per hour could be reached. Bolt, at his top speed, has reached, probably for just a split second, right? Has reached 28 miles an hour. Unbelievable. If he could maintain that speed over a whole 100 meters with a flying start, he would have a record time of 8.05 seconds. Though we see that he does indeed conform to the human limits of around, generally speaking, 23 miles per hour, his top speed is mind-boggling. Interesting. By the way, at 23 miles an hour, that is 22 feet per second. Okay, I just find this stuff fascinating. But what I find more fascinating is that once someone broke that glass ceiling, more people have done it. Is that going to be anything that we're going to do? No, not in that. But I wonder in other areas of our life, what glass ceiling do you have that you need to break your own records? I got to tell you, I watched Elon Musk's rocket this week, the Heavy Falcon. And I got to tell you, I was inspired by watching that, the enthusiasm, the excitement of breaking that. What makes that so special? Did any of you watch it, by the way? Check this out. This is unbelievable. First of all, it can carry the heaviest payload of any rocket ever created. Basically, they can take a 747 and put it inside the rocket, or it could have that amount of space filled with luggage, people. A Tesla. Yeah, you put a Tesla on the end of it. There's a car floating through space.
yeah, the driver is really just a surprised intern.
Yeah, that would be a sad thing, right? Yeah, he talked about that, how it was a mummy. Someone did ask him about that. I watched his news conference. But it can take 100 and... What was that?
Someone showed us the car that says made on Earth by humans.
It says, man, that's assuming they can read English, right? All right, so check this out. 150-ton payload. But the cool thing I thought was the breakthrough that when the side boosters came off going out of orbit,
Isn't that cool?
they turned around and they flew back to Earth and then tipped right side up and landed right where, essentially where they were programmed to land, right in the center of that circle. That's a human breakthrough. It's unbelievable. Okay. How about this? Talking about beliefs. You're going to go a little deeper now. There we go. Your body takes on the characteristics of your most dominant beliefs. Once you truly believe something, you go into the state of that being true. You always act and respond according to what you believe is true. Tony Robbins would say this: the language we attach to our experiences becomes our experience. The moment you attach language, It takes on the sensation of that language. There was a study done with someone who had multiple personality disorder, or they now call it dissociative disorder. And in this study, and there's been several studies like it, where when someone is in an, let's just say, generally speaking, a normal physical condition, then their body responds accordingly. But when they go into the personality of the diabetic, they take on all the characteristics that can be measured as a diabetic. It's unbelievable. There was a group study done with hypnosis where when they were put into a trance, they were told that they were going to be touched with a hot piece of metal, but while they were in the trance, they were touched with a piece of ice, and at everybody's spot where they were touched with that ice, they had formed a blister because of the belief that it was a hot piece of metal. They did another study I came across where, and I'm not saying this is a good model, I'm not saying this should be applied to people that are going through this, but they took a study of a group of cancer patients, and they gave 50% of them the chemotherapy. They were told their hair would fall out. Both groups were told their hair would fall out, but they gave chemotherapy to 50% of the group, and they gave distilled water, a placebo, to the other group, and their hair fell out. Deep stuff. The Trobriand Islands, maybe you've heard of that. In this particular part of the world, they freely engage in sex without any type of protection. Yet premarital pregnancy is virtually unknown. Amphetamines and barbiturates. What about placebo study where they gave people amphetamines, which are supposed to speed up your body, and yet at the same time, they actually gave them a barbiturate, which is supposed to slow the body down. And the opposite happened. Whether it's Mother Teresa, whether it's Adolf Hitler, whether it's Gandhi, or let's say terrorists, though all those behaviors and patterns and belief systems and ideologies are governed by beliefs. And I'm telling you here today that your beliefs are either empowering you or they're limiting your performance. That's all I'm trying to say. I'm not trying to go way deep into some psychotherapy, and we're going to handle some serious stuff in this room today. But what I am going to say is that at a very simple level, you have beliefs that drive your performance, that drive your decisions, that may be limiting your results. And I get that we're all at different places of what our values are and what our needs are and so forth, but let's walk through this. If you keep telling yourself, I don't have the money, then your brain will find ways to make that right or true. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. All right, if you'll turn to the next page, here's what I want you to do. Rather than me draw it for you, you're going to draw it for yourself, but I want you to draw it's pretty simple. Watch how basic this is.
Is it a stick man?
Draw a bridge. Just the top portion of the bridge. A bridge, unless it's a water bridge, like up in Bellevue, Washington, right, or something. A bridge cannot stand without underneath it columns. So let's, before we do that, let's draw 4 columns. Okay, check out this analogy here. Beliefs are a matter of intensity. For example, and you can write this in the first box, but this would represent the first column. There's 2 parts to a belief. There's the general belief, and then there's the evidence that supports the belief. A belief cannot be true or stand on its own by itself. That would be possibly in the first square you'd write down the word idea. You'll see how this flows together as we keep going forward. So in that first box, write down an idea. That's an unsupported belief. That's just an idea. It's a thought. Okay? There's no evidence to confirm whether that's true or not. The second one is, which is a little bit stronger, so you add a column and you create an opinion. But now we add more columns under that bridge, and what does that create? You go from opinion to belief. And what do you think the last one is? You put another column under that belief. The last one is conviction. It gets stronger and stronger and stronger. It is human nature for us to adopt a belief system. Cause and effect, we see something happen, we take an action, we get a result, we adopt a belief. And then what do? It's human nature to now gather evidence to support that belief. Some of you, I'm guessing, have convinced yourself cause and effect. I have this strong belief now, maybe it's just a belief, it's not a conviction, it's a belief that I am this quality of a salesperson, or I can perform this result. Because the last 3 years, this is generally the result that I've gotten. And so you've accepted as a truth and reality. I'm asking you to push back on that. Look at the bottom here. Human beings are belief-driven. Beliefs and goals provide enormous energy to keep you in alignment with the beliefs. When a person accepts a new belief or sets an exciting goal, he or she will either create the conditions that harmonize with the new belief or revert to the old way of thinking or remain where they are. So I love this right here. To develop a belief, there's oftentimes cause and effect. But you must not always believe that cause and effect. Human beings are always seeking to maintain harmony between their beliefs and reality. See, if you're constantly telling yourself, I don't have the money, then your brain will find ways to make that right, making it a self-fulfilled prophecy. I'll tell you a story. My daughter, on Wednesday, had a middle school basketball game. I've got to leave, by the way. Right after this, I'm going to jam out of here. I got to run home, change my clothes, pick up my girls, and we're going to drive down to Kelso for her. She's in a select team, so we got to go down to Kelso to go to her tournament. But at school, she plays at school as well. And I'm going to tell you, I've said it before, I think, that my wife and I, our genetics, I was never great at sports. I was okay. My wife was okay. But whatever it is, our genetics have created children that are just kind of fluke. They just naturally pick up stuff like that, sports and athletics. So she's an animal on the court. I mean, she is fun to watch. I mean, this girl, if our team sees who the star shooter is, they will move her to take that person every time, because she's so good on defense, and her master skill is she can steal the ball from you. And she'll get breakaways all day long. It's fun to watch. Well, on Wednesday, mind you, she's 11 years old, going to turn 12 this coming week. So I know as a dad and as a professional that there's still vulnerable caverns, right? There's still vulnerabilities in there. And here's what happened. She went in for a drive, and two girls kind of crossed their arms across her face, and she fell to the ground, and she was bleeding from her lip. Obviously, they had to stop the game. She started to cry. I don't blame her for crying. It's embarrassing, but it's also probably pretty painful. She's bleeding out her lip. She comes off to the side. They take her outside. They fix her up, whatever. They've got this big ice pack against her lip. She's sitting there. There's still a whole second half of the game to go. As a dad, you could consider me and my wife as tiger dads and tiger moms, okay? What I sat up there 4 benches back watching, and I noticed the varsity head coach leaning into her, are you okay? Is everything right? How are you feeling? And just babying her. My blood started to boil inside. Why? Because I didn't want her to get rewarded for being hurt. Because at a subconscious level, we get what pays us off, right? If we get a reward for something that's cause and effect, boom, I might adopt a belief system there. And so when that assistant coach or that varsity coach for the older team moved away, I got out of my seat. I went down there where she was sitting with the rest of the team. I go, girl, you get back out there. She goes, but Dad, I cut my lip. I go, those are battle scars. I said, you cherish those. You go back out there. And he goes, but Dad, you really yet? And the girl sitting next to her said, oh, it is really bad, Mr. Hoisington. I said, Emily, if it's really bad, then we need to take her to the hospital right now. And then Kyla goes, here, and she looked. And I go, baby, that's a scratch. That's a little scratch. Now get out there and play. So a couple minutes later, I finally yelled to the coach, get Kyla in. I gently said it, because I had to give her the kind of the prompt. And she goes over to Kyla, you ready to go in? And she goes, yeah. And she went in, and she did great. She got like 16 points. It was awesome. And then with 2 minutes left, what happened? A girl came in and swiped her with her arm on the ear and knocked her to the ground, and she hit her head on the ground. They pulled her out the last 2 minutes of the game. So I said, honey, we had 2 cars at the school. I said, honey, you take Julia home. I'm going to drive alone with Kyla. This was my moment to teach a principle. I said, honey, you played an awesome game today. You were an animal out there. It was awesome. I said, but I want to talk to you about something. I didn't like how that adult coach was breathing down your neck and giving you too much love. Listen, as a dad, I give my children a ton of love. 100 times the amount of love that I do in expectations. I promise you that. But I said, Kyla, she goes, Dad, you don't have to say anymore. I knew that this wasn't going to limit me. It's something like that. Like she knows. She knew that she has to rise above that, to not let that define her. But sometimes with beliefs, cause and effect, we adopt a belief that may not be useful for us. I don't know what beliefs you have that limit you, but they may not be useful is all I'm trying to say. Be careful what you allow in. Okay, page 4. So in the first box, this is a process of thinking and belief formation. Number 1, you have an event. Event is the word. From that event, number 2, you have thoughts. Then by the way, thoughts are words, phrases that we say. Words trigger images, which trigger emotion, which trigger performance, right? Action, images. You might even want to put there cause and effect. It has those thoughts. It starts looking for things. That would lead us into number 3, which is interpretation. We interpret the experience, which means we focus on some things and we find meaning on other things. Number 4, from that you develop a belief. Then number 5, you make a decision. What am I going to do with that belief now? So number 5 is decision. And then number 6 is action. And one thing I'm going to say, every one of those steps, if you could see here, see all the lines around it? They're reciprocal. Everything affects everything else. Nothing stands alone. So you get a result, and what does that do? It creates a belief. It goes backwards, or it impacts the next event you go into, and the thoughts you have, you start from a different place because you have a new belief, or you reinterpret it a different way. It's reciprocal. They all connect with each other. Down at the bottom, we filter and interpret in 3 ways. Number 1, as human beings, we delete information. The word is delete. I'll give you an example of that. Fritz Perls, who started Gestalt therapy, would use this example. He says, let's say you go into a cocktail party. You have several people. You have one person who's a painter, and they go in as a painter. Because of what they value, what's the first thing they do? They walk around and look at the walls of wherever the party is, and they look at all the artwork, and they analyze it, and they enjoy it. And then he says, maybe the next person that comes in is an alcoholic. So what do you think that person does when they come into the cocktail party? They go, that's right, they go straight back to the cocktail bar or whatever, the bar. Okay, that's what they value. And then he says, You have a socializer that comes in. This has to do with deletion. Someone who comes in and he engages in every conversation. He's like, how are you doing, right? But then Fritz Perls says, after about 2 hours of socializing, even the socializer gets tired. And when they start looking around in the middle of a conversation, they start filtering. They delete the conversation that they once enjoyed being in, and then start looking for a place to sit down. Right? Deletion. Right? When the painter came in, they deleted everything but the painting. When the alcoholic came in, they deleted everything except for what they were looking for, the bar. And when the socializer got tired of socializing, they changed their focus and started to look for a place to sit and relax. We delete information all the time. Number 2, we distort information. Our reality, the way we look at it, is skewed. We don't see reality as reality really is. We see it as we see it through our own filters and belief systems and so forth. And number 3, we generalize. What does this mean? I have never opened that door in the back of the room. It's always been open when I've been here. The door is closed right now. Do you believe that I have the ability to go open that door right now? Yes or no? Yeah, okay, you're like, well, I'm not sure. Okay, yeah, of course I do. This is generalizing. Because I know how doorknobs work, that you turn it left or right, the door will open. So you've had one experience with one door, and that now translates to thousands of doors. You know how to open them. That's how we generalize. All right, let me share a couple of examples of words and filtering and so forth. Look at Fox News, CNN, MSNBC. Look at those 3 channels. This past week or a week ago, the Republicans put out the FBI memo, and the Democrats wanted to put out their own memo. They're looking at the same data, but they both have 2 different interpretations of the evidence. 2 total different interpretations. When Hinckley, I think his name was Hinckley, who shot Reagan, when he was on the stand, they had 5 psychologists in his defense come up and talk for him. And every one of them took the same data and evidence and skewed it to hopefully get him off punishment, conviction. How about W. Mitchell? I don't know if I've shared this story. It's 1973. He's riding a motorcycle down the road. All of a sudden, he looks off to the side, and he noticed something in the far distance, but when he pulled his head back, he realized that a semi-truck in front of him had stopped. And he ran almost right into it, so in a split second, he laid the bike down, he skid 100 feet, rolled over. Unfortunately, the gas cap came off, it sparked, it lit the ground on fire and his body on fire. And W. Mitchell, you can look it up later, W. Mitchell had 65% of his body 3rd-degree burns. In fact, when he was in the hospital, the nurse that helped him, he ended up marrying her, but the nurse that helped her, he said when his hair would start to grow back through burnt skin, there was no painkiller you could give a person that would take the pain away. Just, he goes, every time wind or someone would walk by and it would cause wind to brush past the hair, it would be excruciating. That's pretty powerful. Well, he got a lawsuit for that cap coming off. He got, I don't know, $1 million or something because that cap shouldn't have come off. And what did he do? After getting out of the hospital, he started a company, a wood stove company. I thought that was an interesting choice. He made $1 million doing that or more. And then he lives in Colorado and he bought a plane. And he decided to, with 3 of his friends, take his little plane up into the air. The plane got 90 feet up in the air, and the engine quit, and the plane dropped like a rock. His 3 friends got out of that plane and walked out without any hurts or bruises, or were okay physically. But W. Mitchell couldn't walk out. He had severed his lower vertebrae, and he was paralyzed for life, and he's in a wheelchair today. You ask him what he says about his experiences in life, and he says, it used to be I could do 10,000 things, but now I can only do 9,999 things. And I choose to focus on the 9,999 things I can do rather than the 10,000 things I can't do. That is a choice in thinking. That is a choice in belief. You're not your experiences. You are more than your experience. And your words matter. You'll remember in 1973, Maravich, the NBA basketball star, he always said, I've got the article here, but I won't take time to do it. He says, I don't want to die playing for the NBA at age 40. When do you think he died? In the NBA at age 40. Unbelievable. Got it right here. How about Major Nesmith? I wrote about this in If You Think You Can. Imagine playing golf and never scoring. How many of you love golf in here? I'm just curious. Okay, I'm not a golfer, but imagine playing golf and never scoring below 90. Then imagine taking a 7-year break and the next time you played, you shot a 74. That'd be pretty amazing, right? It's a true story. Well, that's exactly what happened to Major Nesmith. Years ago, he was sent to Vietnam during the war, and he was eventually captured. He then spent the next 7 years in a small cage that was only 4 feet by 5 feet and only 4.5 feet tall. To prevent him from going insane, he spent his waking moments imagining himself playing golf. 7 days a week, he imagined everything from the clothes he wore to the grip and his swing. He imagined the ball flying through the air and landing precisely where he wanted it to land. Day after day, he played the perfect game inside of his mind's eye, while in reality, he was restricted and suffering. By the time he was released from prison 7 years later, his imagined game had become such a part of him that rather than picking up where he had left off, he had dramatically improved his game by nothing more than his imagination. Had he repeatedly imagined his past performance of never scoring below 90 during those 7 years, his game would have remained the same. Instead, he imagined a better game and conditioned it into his mind, which allowed his physical performance to harmonize with his internal picture. All right, quickly. Let's go to the last page. Up at the top. When you act as if is the word, as if. When you act as if something is true, you trick your brain into noticing the evidence that would make it true. By acting as if, you begin the process of changing the belief. Now, there are two types of beliefs. There's primary belief, and there are rules or secondary beliefs. I'll give you a case example. So, primary beliefs is number one. Number two is secondary beliefs or rules. So when Danielle and I were first married, and we were working for Tony Robbins, we would drive our car from different locations, so let's say Denver, Colorado to Wisconsin. But when I left the Tony Robbins organization, I remember we drove from Wisconsin all the way back to Seattle. And I remember on that drive, whenever we were trying to push to get home as fast as we could, and I remember I would get hungry. So I would say, let's pull off. There's a McDonald's or there's a Burger King. I'll pull off the road. Let's get something to eat. Danielle would say, no way. There's no way I'm eating there. No way I'm eating at a fast food restaurant. And so I would get off and get my food sometimes. And then she would see 5-10 miles later a nice sit-down restaurant, and she would go then and order to go. What's the belief? We both have the same primary belief that eating is important, that we got to eat to sustain ourselves, but we have different rules for what that means. My wife's belief was fast food isn't healthy, therefore I will not put it in my body. My belief was maybe it's not healthy and maybe I shouldn't put it in my body, but when I'm hungry, that overweighs the need to eat, right? Where she would say, never. And by the way, For the record, I've never seen my wife other than In and Out. I think I've said this before. In and Out has never eaten at a fast food restaurant. All right. This is rules. We all have different rules for what spirituality means, or what money means, or what family size means, or cleanliness, or sales. I would have you, when you leave today, think about, I think we all agree here that getting sales is important. That's a good primary belief. If you're getting tripped up and not getting the results that you want, it's likely the secondary belief of what does it mean to be a professional salesperson? What does it mean to get results? Because for one person, getting results might be 2 car sales a month, where someone else it's 15 on the average, or someone else it's 10 on the average. What does it mean? And I'll take you back to what I said in the beginning. We get what we must have. So I would point you back to that ideal life. I promise you, and I've said this over and over the years that I've been here, that if you will dwell on that ideal, it is like you and natural for you, for your subconscious mind to close the gap between where you want to be and where you are right now. The problem with human beings, and I've seen it with myself and I've seen it inside organizations for 20 years, people don't take the time to get specific, to get clear, to put those images in their mind. Therefore, they're not turning on the engine underneath that can actually help you get there because of a lack of clarity. Identify, this is the last part, 5 steps to changing a belief. Identify the belief and its corresponding evidence. So belief and evidence. Number 2, realize the consequences or payoffs. Consequences or payoffs. Rewards. Number 3, dispute, challenge or doubt the truth of the belief and its evidence. Number 4, replace with a new alternative. Number 5, condition it. Make it a new belief, which we've talked about, I think, a year ago. Maybe we need to soon revisit this part where we actually adopt new beliefs, and I take you through a process to do that called the Ellis process. But here's one thing I'll say in closing. Dr. Penfield was a great brain surgeon, psychologist. He tested people's brains, and he would take a probe, open up someone's brain, and he'd take a probe, and he would touch a certain part of their brain, and their arm would start going up. And so Dr. Penfield in his research said, "Are you making your hand go up?" And he said, "No, my arm is just going up." And he goes, "Okay, I'm going to touch you again in that spot. And your arm's going to go up, but I want you to move it side to side or move it in a circle rather than just up." So he touched him in the exact same spot. The arm started to go up. And then at the appropriate time, the gentleman decided to move it sideways, despite the cortex motor being probed. My point in sharing that with you is you have the power to change your destiny by changing your own beliefs, by looking at your world, saying, this is the ideal life I'd like to be at, this is the ideal sales I'd like to be at, right? I'm trucking along, but I'm not getting the real results that I want. Get out of that. That's stale, that's boring, that's old. Unleash yourself by looking, take time out after work this weekend, your next day off. Sit for 2 hours and identify, what beliefs do I have? Go through the 5 steps that I just gave you. What consequences am I getting by believing this way? And I'll tell you, you can, if you'll put a good positive picture out there in the end and be willing to take action, you can start changing those beliefs and change your results. My hope is you have a wonderful weekend. Thank you. As always, you are wonderful. You are friends of mine. Go make it happen this weekend. Thank you very much. You bet. Is that too heavy, Mike? Can handle that?
That's good.
Podcast listeners, thanks for listening. You've taken time out of your schedule, and I really appreciate it. Now do me a favor. If you like what you heard, star it. Thanks. Now go unleash your greatness within.
greatnesswithin.com.